The sky above Cordaxis 9 was an open wound, hemorrhaging black lightning across acid-choked clouds. The dropship shuddered as it breached the atmosphere, hull groaning in protest. Below lay a wasteland of rusted bones, once shining starships, now buried under ash and fungal rot. Sergeant Rika Salas checked her HUD again. Clean, LZ. Too clean. No residual EM, no drone interference, no local chatter. That was impossible. She scanned the plateau, smooth, craterless, unnaturally quiet. Even the acid rainfall moved in rhythmic pulses, as if choreographed. Her team joked, cursed, tightened straps. Rika didn't laugh. Her cybernetic eye flicked over topography and caught discrepancies. Magnetic anomalies, heat distortions, ghost pings. She flagged them. Command said proceed. She gritted her teeth. This smelled like a culling ground. She'd survived 7 death missions. She knew a trap when she was standing in the middle of it. Still, orders were orders. And she obeyed. The ramp dropped. They moved out. Cordaxis 9 held its breath. It began with silence. Then the mist came alive. Figures flickered in and out of perception, cloaked by alien tech that bent light and sound like a mirage of nightmares. Acid bursts rained from the sky, corrosive enough to melt steel, angry enough to scream. Rika's HUD overloaded with casualty markers. Guns failed, jammed mid-cycle, locking with shrieks of dying code. Marines fell, one by one, howling as armor bubbled off bone. Rika ripped off her failing rifle and drove her fists into shadows. One went down. 2 more swarmed. Something speared her thigh, tore through muscle and synth flesh. Blood sprayed. She collapsed, vision fracturing. Through the haze, she saw Corporal Lannis melt alive, shrieking her name as acid devoured his lungs. She reached for him and blacked out. She had died before, technically, on Vex Prime, on Hecary Drift, in the Maw. But this felt different. Pain lapped at her mind like static. Paralysis swallowed her limbs. Darkness folded over everything like a burial shroud. Her hearing returned first, wet breathing, scuttling limbs, the low hum of alien machinery. Then the voice. It wasn't Terran. It rasped with reverence, admiration twisted by cruelty. We have a ghost. A chitin-clad figure loomed over her. Its eyes shimmered like oil. She couldn't move, couldn't even scream. She watched as a sealed containment pod shut with a hydraulic hiss, drowning her in pressurized silence. That was the last moment of freedom Sergeant Rika Salas would know for days. Light returned in pulses, green, sickly, artificial. The stench hit her first. Burnt antiseptics mixed with fungal decay. She lay strapped to an alien slab, arms spread, spine clamped into something cold and wet. Her wounds, severe, were patched by something worse than medicine. Nanogel pulsed under her skin, alive and foreign. A drone hovered, its language filter scraping through synthetic tones. You are human. This is your end. The ceiling above was crusted with bones, Varnak trophies, and biological waste. Scars of previous experiments painted the walls. You will be dissected, your agony recorded, your body and failure displayed. Screens lit around her, preparing for transmission. To show your species what resistance breeds. Her eye focused. She knew this wasn't for research. This was theater. They didn't just want to kill her. They wanted to unmake her. To peel her apart for an audience. To broadcast her screams through the black reaches of space until Terran morale collapsed like glass under a hammer. Rika's captors studied pain like art. She was a specimen, a cautionary tale, a living declaration of Varnak dominance. Her cybernetics had been scrambled, temporarily dampened by electromagnetic pulses, but not disabled. The Varnak didn't understand human limits. That was their first mistake. The drone explained, slowly and without urgency, how her organs would be extracted, live. How her heart would beat until the final cut. She watched her vitals spike. They thought it was fear. It wasn't. Every Marine trained for death. Not every Marine trained to outthink it. Rika let her body lie still, but her mind never stopped. She mapped the lab by sound and flicker. tracked drone rotations, measured the seconds between scans. The slab was neural interfaced, but her cortex had backups. Painkillers numbed the wounds, not the rage. A vent in the ceiling shifted temperature every 27 seconds, likely airflow. Probably connected to the outflow tunnel. Probably unguarded. Her breathing slowed. Rage crystallized into intention. She wasn't here to die. She was here to finish the mission. They thought pain would break her. It sharpened her instead. The feed went live to hundreds of systems. Cameras zoomed on alien instruments, each designed for torment. A scalpel descended toward exposed flesh. Rika's vitals read stable, eerily so, but her eye, one human, the other a cracked cybernetic lens, glowed like something reborn. It wasn't submission. It was strategy. The Ghost Walker wasn't dead. She was hunting from within, and the Varnak, in their arrogance, had just invited a Terran nightmare into their most sacred sanctum. The galaxy watched. The galaxy would soon learn. This wasn't the beginning of a broadcast. It was a declaration. Her body lay slack beneath surgical restraints, drenched in the chemical musk of Varnak antiseptics. Eyes half-lidded, she saw without moving. Breathing shallow. Heartbeat slowed through mental control. The guards mistook silence for surrender. Their arrogance radiated in every footstep, every casual joke in their native clicks and chirps, translated loosely through a neglected drone. Rika counted them. For rotations of 2 guards per shift. Same voices. Same rhythms. Same laugh after scanning her limp limbs. The ceiling lights flickered every 10 seconds. On the 6th flicker, her wrist shackle dimmed. Just for a blink. A cycle flaw. An unnoticed stutter in the energy matrix. She marked the timing. 5 flickers. Then freedom. Again. 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 The guards called her meat with medals. Talked about the summit. Laughed about the last human they peeled like fruit. One leaned closer. Too close. The pulse in his neck beat steady. Her enhanced eye narrowed beneath the cracked lens. Stillness. Stillness. One more flicker. 5, 4, 3. The next second would echo across systems. On the 6th flicker, the restraint weakened, and Rika exploded into motion. Her legs, once still, snapped upward in a blur of cybernetic muscle. Bone shattered under pressure. The first guard's throat collapsed with a sickening crunch. He gagged once, then silence. The second turned, but she was already moving. Grabbing the chain from the first, she coiled it around the second's neck and pulled. His claws scraped against her skin, finding no purchase. He bucked, spasmed, then slumped. 2 bodies. No alarms. Not yet. She was already free. The shackle gave under her full strength, plasma-burned metal parting with a scream. Blood smeared the slab. Her side burned from reopened wounds, but adrenaline muted the ache. She tore off the closest guard's armor panel, slinging it across her chest like a makeshift plate. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Slow, unhurried. She darted into a shadow, vanished. Somewhere distant, sirens began to chirp. Too late. Rika was already on the move. One Marine, loose in a fortress. The exit corridor stretched ahead, lined with inactive drones and faded banners of conquest. Rika stopped beside the last bulkhead and peeled a plasma scalpel from a medical tray. It hissed to life with a white-hot arc. She turned to the alloy wall and began carving. Each stroke sizzled through the metal, each letter deliberate. No wasted motion. No second-guessing. One Marine. She left it glowing, still smoldering as she slipped into the next junction. When the scanning drones arrived minutes later, they captured the message in full. Protocol dictated automatic broadcast, standard failsafe for security breaches. The message beamed across the base's command net and into Varnak hands. High Warbinder Kha'Zix was watching when it flickered to life. The myth had moved. The corpse was still warm. Rika worked fast. Using her boot blade, she peeled back the guard's neural port. Bioconductive gel from a ruptured medkit coated the interface. Her wrist jack connected with a spark of static and ice. The alien's consciousness was long gone, but the network lingered. Voices poured in. Thoughts, emotions, commands. She tuned her implants to interpret the neural frequencies. The Varnak used a psionic mesh, thought-to-thought chatter layered in instinct and hierarchy. She listened in, parsed data through flashing code. They were planning to dissect her. Not in secrecy, but live. During the Concord Summit. It would be televised. Terran colonies would be forced to watch as one of their own was vivisected, her screams echoing through diplomacy halls. Not research, not necessity, psychological war. She pulled free, breath ragged, face hard. They wanted fear. They would get something else. The cell was hidden deep in containment, behind a door labeled non-priority asset. Inside, curled in a corner, sat a Concord xenomedic with silver skin and trauma in her eyes. Metzi. Rika forced the door open with a salvaged keycard and stepped inside, plasma scalpel low. Metzi didn't move. She'd seen soldiers before, had watched them die under her hands. I don't fix them anymore, Metzi said, voice brittle. I'm not asking, Rika replied. I'm surviving. She dragged the medic to her feet. Metzi resisted, but not for long. Old reflexes stirred. She saw the wound on Rika's side and couldn't look away. Her hands, traitorous, reached out with instinctual care. The war had broken her, but something older still lived under the fear. A healer's defiance. Kazakhs studied the footage with amusement. The Marines' movements were calculated, brutal. No wasted strikes. She had no weapons, but she made corpses. She had no comms, but she listened in. She had no flag, but she carved words into their walls. It intrigued him. To the warbinder, humans were clever animals. Fast to learn, slow to die. Dangerous in large numbers. But this one, this ghost walker, they called her a myth for a reason. Let it run, he told his aides. Let's see what it thinks freedom means. Others urged caution. He dismissed them. Theatrics were part of his art. Breaking spirits required performance. What was fear without the illusion of hope? He wanted her broken. But not yet. Not before she danced a little more. She didn't flee. She adapted. Vince became vectors. Rika harvested spores from containment growths, blending them into oxygen lines. Hallucinogenic reactions followed. Guards turned on each other, seeing phantoms in the walls. She scavenged armor, refitting Varnak, plating into a crude disguise. Enough to pass, long enough to kill. She rewired a coolant pipe to rupture when scanned. 3 guards lost limbs in the frostbite blast. They called it sabotage. Sabotage required knowledge. This was war. Doors sealed. Lights flickered more erratically. Command centers rerouted power, but Rika had already spliced into the core conduits. Her understanding of their systems grew with each kill. Whispers spread in the barracks. Not a prisoner, of a ghost. Ghostwalker walked again. They wanted a demonstration of dominance. They got a syllabus in survival. A Varnak scout fired wildly into a corridor, screaming in broken tones about fire and blood and voices that weren't his. His squad cut him down before the hallucination could reach them. Too late, they were already breathing the spores. Cameras caught it all. Across the compound, one name spread. The humans had a word for her, and it was solace. They learned too late what that word meant. Not peace, not surrender, not safety. Solace was what humans found after the fire, after the vengeance, after the ghosts. She wasn't dead. She wasn't hiding. She was preparing. And somewhere, deep inside that fortress of arrogance and alien pride, the last Marine sharpened her, well, like a blade. The broadcast had begun, but it would be the Varnak who screamed first. The fortress pulsed like a living thing, its walls warm with residual energy, its conduits twitching beneath layers of chitin and metal. Rika moved through it like a virus, small, invisible, precise. She crawled into maintenance ducts and fed corrupted code into the fortress's bioorganic relay routes, forging feedback loops that disrupted the Varnak hivelink. The results were immediate. Orders arrived garbled, twisted by the neural stutter she engineered. Squad leaders doubled back on their own paths, issuing contradictory commands. Drones seized mid-patrol, writhing in static spasms. Command centers dimmed their lights and whispered of infiltration, though none could agree on where it started. Paranoia bloomed like mold in a sealed room. Hive minds broke apart not with gunfire, but with silence, when each node began to doubt its neighbor. Rika fed them silence in abundance. And into that silence, she whispered madness. The fortress began eating itself in confusion, and the Ghost Walker moved untouched. No tags, no name, no species. She melted her identity tags in a bowl of Varnak blood, the acidic compound burning the metal to slag. Using scavenged armor, discarded plating, and strips of synthetic flesh, she fashioned a grotesque disguise. Part Terran, part Varnak, all nightmare. She walked among them like a rumor made flesh. Her movements no longer matched any biometric file. Cameras glitched when she passed. Sensors gave false readings. She blended into enemy formations just long enough to vanish before being seen. Whispers began. The Ghost Walker was wearing their dead. The idea spread like fire across coal mines. Troopers flinched at their own reflections, questioned the familiarity in a comrade's gait. They had tried to bury her under steel and command. Now she wore their fear like armor. The corpses of Concord operatives were more than meat. They were memory. Embedded in their skulls were implants she once trusted, now repurposed for war. She scavenged one, then another, fitting them together like broken teeth. Sparks flew. Circuits groaned. Eventually, the code spoke. Through static and hiss, she heard them. Concord officers, still arguing over failed diplomacy. Varnak tacticians, planning executions masked as studies. She played both sides like a shadowed knife. Listening, cataloging, manipulating. Mistrust rippled outward. Allies suspected spies. Enemies feared traitors. And through it all, Rika stalked truth, raw, unfiltered, weaponized. Knowledge wasn't power. Deception was. The genetics lab sat dormant, guarded by two sleep-deprived sentinels who didn't see the vapor until it was too late. Rika breached the node through an exhaust hatch and released a canister of siphon neurogas. The Varnak dropped in silence, their minds shattered into static by the engineered compound. Inside, the lab was a tomb of ambition. Vials glowed. Tanks churned. She found what she needed. Mutagens labeled Phase 9. Experimental strains designed to bypass sensory thresholds. Painless. Invisible. Lethal. She worked fast, refining doses into aerodisruptors, subtle enough to confuse and cruel enough to incapacitate. Within hours, scouts began reporting tremors, lost time, identity breaks. They couldn't remember who they were, but they remembered fear. She made sure of it. Rika dragged another Varnak scientist into Metzi's cell. The healer flinched but obeyed. Stabilize it. Get data. Metzi refused at first, until Rika pulled the pin from a makeshift detonator and dropped it between them. She worked in silence after that. Bandaged wounds. Extracted information. Eyes hollow, hands steady. Rika watched her closely. "Cross me," she said once, "and I turn this place into a mass grave." Metzi nodded, but the tension between them changed over time. A shared glance after a successful infiltration. A whispered warning before patrol. No friendship bloomed, but a quiet alliance did, built not on hope, but on the fragile scaffolding of survival. Two women. One war. No agreement, but something close to trust. They believed in ritual, in sacred rites of death. Rika turned that against them. She posed the fallen in gestures meant only for honored Varnak elders. Hands splayed, claws broken, armor cracked just so. A blasphemy born in silence. Others she left half-whispering, brains scorched with disruptors, moaning nonsense in a hive links. They spoke of the dark, of a figure that moved without breath, of a name carried on winds that did not blow. I walk in the dark. I carry their names. She hijacked neural relays and whispered it into sleeping minds. Entire squads begged for reassignment. Some deserted. Others broke down mid-patrol and turned weapons on their own. The fortress once bled conquest. Now it bled fear. Kha'Zix received dozens of pleas for reassignment. He denied them all. Fear was part of the lesson, but even he didn't sleep anymore. In the quiet tunnels, Rika sometimes spoke aloud to people who weren't there. Gabe, her demolitions expert, who always joked before the blast. Tessa, her squad mate who never stopped humming in the dark. And Jax, her sister, burned alive in a Concord betrayal, back when Rika still believed in alliances. The hallucinations came when her blood loss spiked, or when silence dragged too long. In the face of a young Varnak, she saw Jax again. Wide eyes. Hesitation. She hesitated too, then remembered what hesitation had cost her. She didn't cry, but she wiped her blade slower, and her hands trembled before each kill. Below the genetics lab was something darker. Hidden behind bioseals and encrypted walls, Rika found the chamber of lost ones. Terrans, Concord defectors, even children. Their eyes were distant. Some blinked in unison, neural graphs sparking on their skulls. Mechanical whispers echoed through flesh. The Varnak weren't studying them. They were rewriting them, splicing AI into minds not yet grown, building a new breed, half machine, half slave. Her breath caught. Her rage steadied. She disabled the monitoring systems, left a silent trail of destruction, and slipped back into the ducts. Escape could wait, or had other demands. She scuttled her original exfiltration plan. Too small, too selfish. Instead, she tunneled. Using engineering tools stolen over weeks, she carved escape routes through inactive sectors, mapped blind spots, placed fallback gear in old ventilation shafts. Every hall she passed became a potential barricade. Every broken camera, a weapon in waiting. She returned nightly to the chamber of lost ones, whispered her plan, promised freedom in quiet tones. Most were too broken to respond. Some nodded. She would free them anyway. She wasn't just the ghost walker anymore. She was their blade in the dark. Metzi didn't ask questions anymore. When Rika brought her blueprints of the Hive core and requested help deciphering Varnak energy architecture, she only answered. Together, they traced the energy spires, nodes that powered the neural uplink connecting command to every Varnak soldier. A single rupture could create seconds of chaos. That's all Rika needed. Metzi watched Rika study the schematics like a surgeon. Cold, calculated, focused. What happens if it fails? Metzi asked once. Then I failed beside them. The plan solidified between them. Not a rescue, not revenge. An ending drawn with fire. Rika finished the beacon from spare relay chips and a stolen encryption key. She uploaded everything. Footage of the hybrids, DNA samples, energy patterns, troop movements. She added one line of text. Fortress K9. I'm inside. They're building monsters. I'm breaking them. Solace. Then she launched the burst into deep space, silent and undetectable. If it reached Terran Director hands, help might come. But even if it didn't, they would know what she did here. That she stood alone and fought anyway. One Marine, a myth with bloodied hands, and a war still burning in her bones. The transmission rippled through the hive net like oil over flame. An official ceasefire sanctioned by Concord Command and Varnak High Council. Rika's voice, expertly mimicked by stolen vocal modules, declared her surrender. A ceremony of transition, a symbol of submission. Dozens of Varnak warriors assembled beneath banners soaked in centuries of conquest. Their blades were sheathed, their spines coiled in pride. This was to be a moment of humiliation, a Terran relic kneeling before ascendant biology. But the sanctum was not a temple. It was a tomb. Rika watched from above, suspended in the dark, wrapped in shadow and purpose. As they bowed in mock benediction, she descended, not in chains, but armored in vengeance. No sirens warned, no guards called out, because the betrayal was theirs. She moved without prelude, her entry silent but absolute, her gauntlets lit with voltage and memory. The trap had teeth. She did not come to surrender. She came to end it. The waist shaft was carved into obsidian bone, scalding, narrow, unwelcoming. It spit her out into a molten labyrinth, catacombs veined with lava streams and trembling with pressure. Her skin boiled under the heat, but coolant siphoned from med pods clung to her flesh like a second skin, blurring her thermal signature. Her armor steamed in silence. She crawled beneath sensor arrays, calibrated for pulse and heat. One mistake and the walls would ignite. The air burned her lungs. Her mind numbed from the heat. But her mission was colder than magma. Wrapped in soaked bandages, her blade gauntlets flexed quietly, teeth of steel and spark waiting for blood. No one saw her coming, and no one would live long enough to speak of it. The first guard never saw the blade. The second died, trying to scream. Rika left their bodies in a spiral, arms crossed in a mimicry of reverence, then twisted the pose inside out, claws broken backward, eyes removed. The Varnak glyphs for mourning, perverted into symbols of disgrace. Blood spilled in loops that glowed faintly in the sanctum's biolight, a message only Varnak minds could decipher. A curse etched in silence. From the ventilation shafts, junior officers whispered that old gods had returned, angry at their children. Some refused to walk the hallway. Others flung themselves into duty with manic denial. But the glyphs remained, bright, defiant. She had killed two. The fortress thought it had lost dozens. Fear did her work before her fists ever needed to rise. The door shivered under her touch, retinal scanner flashing red, until Metzi's patch code rewrote its hierarchy. The locks hissed open. Behind it, a corridor packed with the discarded. Humans, hybrids, Concord defectors. Some looked like children, others like broken echoes of soldiers once whole. Rika passed them weapons forged from pipes and restraints. Stunners cannibalized from maintenance bots. No one questioned. She stood before them, scarred and luminous in dim red light. "They call me a specimen," she said. "Let's make them remember we're monsters when cornered." Cries rose, hoarse, fractured, defiant. Some would die in the next hour. Many would kill, but all would rise. The core chamber throbbed with bioluminescence, an artificial womb for a dying empire. Kha'Zix waited, motionless. No weapons, just the strange stillness of a predator who believed in victory. "You are evolution," he said. "Together we burn Concord, shatter Terra, rule the remains." He offered her power, not chains. Admiration, not scorn. Rika's breath slowed. Her blade tilted. For a second, she considered it. Rule. Change. A new species born from carnage. Then movement, soft, trembling. Behind Kha'Zix, a hybrid child cowered, its eyes wide, pupils spiraling between human and alien focus. A stitch of scales across one cheek. Skin too young to carry war. Rika's hand twitched. Memory hit like thunder. Her sister Jax, eyes filled with smoke and fire. The smell of plasma. The crack of betrayal. The screams no one saved. The child mirrored that fear. Not programmed. Not artificial. Real. She lowered her blade. Then pivoted. Her hand found the neurotoxic shard, forged in secrecy, soaked in the venom of hybrid nightmares. She leapt before Kha'Zix could react, driving the spike into his third eye, the seat of vision and command. The toxin surged through his mind link like a tsunami of agony. "You wanted a weapon," she said. "You woke a wildfire." He screamed, not in pain, but in disbelief. His hive link shattered, neural nets cascading into chaos. The fortress buckled. Warriors stumbled mid-formation. Orders died in unfinished thought. The hive collapsed in on itself, screaming in dissonant frequency. Kha'Zix fell, clawing at the air like he could still command it. Rika stepped over him. The wildfire had been lit, and it didn't care who burned. The beacon ignited from its hiding place, relays spinning, data screaming into the void. Every file, every horror, every genetic monstrosity, every whisper of Concord complicity. The signal split and jumped systems, overriding firewall after firewall. It hijacked hollow feeds, command consoles, family screens. A child's cry echoed through a Senate hearing. A soldier's sob broke during live deployment. No empire could unsee it. No world could claim ignorance. The myth had become proof. Truth detonated across every star it touched. The walls quaked as the hive's mind died. Metzi led the captives through escape shafts, limping but alive. Behind them, Rika stood alone. The last Varnak zealots charged, fueled by instinct, not command. Blades met blades. Rika fought without finesse. Just grit, just hate, just necessity. One sliced her shoulder. Another gouged her side. She tore through them with gauntlets sparking, niche strikes cracking armor. No words were spoken. Only survival. Only purpose. She bled down the corridor, steps slowing. Her systems blinked red. Vision dimmed. Breath shallow. She fell beside a flickering wall, heat licking at her boots. Fire followed. Then light. A stealth drone descended, Terran markings glowing faint beneath carbon scoring. Metzi stumbled behind it, shoulder out of joint, med pack dragging. "You're not dying in this gutter," she whispered, falling beside her. Rika didn't answer. Couldn't. But her fingers curled into Metzi's sleeve. The mission wasn't over. It was surviving her. One Marine. One reckoning. The fortress imploded behind them, spires collapsing, conduits sparking, screams swallowed in stone. Above, the storm caught her signal. Below, the survivors climbed into stolen shuttles. Across every major system, a single message burned across intercepted feeds. A human walked into the Varnak crucible and came out dragging fire. Screens blinked. Empires paused. The war changed. They wanted anatomy. The message ended. They got apocalypse. The ghost walker vanished again. But the stars would remember. Forever. She lay still beneath the hum of cryomed. Limbs shattered. Veins clotted with coolant and combat drugs. Her lungs hissed under the burden of artificial breath. But she was alive. The stealth evac vessel slipped through black space, its signature scrubbed from all known frequencies. Aboard, Terran operatives avoided conversation. The one in the tank had ended wars. Monitors tracked her vitals, spiking, crashing, rebalancing. Algorithms failed to define her state. But her transmission had already detonated. Dozens of systems now knew the truth. The fortress had fallen, and the weapon that walked like a woman had crawled out, half dead but unbeaten. The war hadn't ended, but it would never look the same again. The Directorate confirmed it within hours. Operation Ghost Flare was real. Networks across Terran and Concord space lit with video drops. Varnak labs, children wired to implants, the nerve core burning. Civilian anchors cried on live streams. Soldiers whispered her name between deployments like a charm against death. The word solace became a contradiction, one that bled and fought and wouldn't die. Some networks censored the worst of it. Others broadcast it uncensored. Whole populations saw the truth with sleepless eyes. A single Terran Marine had walked into hell and dragged its secrets back with her, stitched into wounds and burned into flesh. And the stars, for the first time in a long time, remembered fear. The galaxy fractured along her name. Some called her martyr, some butcher. Statues were proposed on capital moons. Others added her to no-fly lists. Her face scanned at checkpoints like a ghost refusing to stay buried. Terran admirals praised her tenacity. Concord politicians condemned her methods. But no one ignored her. She had defied chain of command, violated surrender protocols, hijacked psychic networks, and survived. She reminded them all that rules were paper and war was fire. No one agreed what she was, only that she had changed everything. Concord's unity bled faster than its talking points. Varnak factions split, some calling for retaliation, others for retreat. Concord member states began freezing shared assets. Joint task forces were suspended. Trade routes stalled mid-flight. A myth had collapsed. The Varnak were not gods, not ascendant, just monsters with polished armor. Diplomats scrambled for footholds as empires cracked along ideological fault lines. Treaties signed with blood now drowned in data. Rika hadn't just walked out of prison. She'd detonated a doctrine. Now the galaxy scrambled to redefine everything it thought was stable. And none of them could look away. Before a high Concord tribunal, Metzi stood alone. No military honors. No polished uniform. Just a medic's badge and sunken eyes. They asked for facts. She gave them memory. Rika's solace prevented mass execution. I saw the experiments. I watched the hybrids cry. I watched her fight. Every act had a cost. She bore it alone. No theatrics. No speeches. Just truth in the voice of someone who'd seen what belief without morality could create. The chamber didn't applaud, but it didn't object either. And somewhere, far from court and light, Rika's shadow deepened. The directorate prepared a ceremony. Medals, commendations, applause. Rika declined every invitation. When pressed for comment, she gave only one. You left us to die. Don't decorate what you abandoned. There was no anger in her voice, only the flat, hard weight of lived betrayal. No one insisted after that. The medals were boxed, the ceremonies postponed, and her silence spoke louder than banners ever could. In a stone-shrouded cemetery carved into a Terran mountain, Rika knelt alone. 7 graves, 7 names, her family in flesh and fire. She set down her unit insignia, streaked with her own dried blood, pressed it into the earth, uploaded a final encrypted log into the headstone base. Not for praise, for record. Then stood. One salute, one moment, then gone again. The world had moved on, but she would not. The Black Ops recovery vessel drifted over Earth's curve, blue oceans glinting under golden light. Metzi stood beside her, shoulders still stiff with healing. Rika said nothing at first, just stared, not down, but forward. What now? Metzi finally asked. Rika's voice was quiet, clear. We make sure they never build another fortress like that again. No vengeance in it, just purpose, and something harder than steel behind her eyes. The kind of resolve no war could kill. I was one, not the first, maybe not the last, but I was enough. Her voice echoed over footage, walls collapsing, survivors fleeing, Varnak fire shrieking through black corridors. I wasn't made for this, but I survived it, adapted to it, answered it. One image, her blood-soaked armor in the wreckage, empty, smoking. I wasn't their lesson. I was their reckoning. The feed ended with Earth rising behind a battered stealth ship. Her voice, one last time. Let them remember that. 1 year later, the stars still shiver at her name. The Varnak War Council lies in ash. Their remaining fleets drift unmoored, leaderless, silent. What Rika's solace shattered was more than metal and hierarchy. It was certainty. Every military academy now teaches solace tactics under locked clearance protocols. Some call her the mother of unconventional doctrine, an icon forged in blood and unreason. Her combat footage is outlawed in 3 Concord systems, labeled destabilizing to morale. Yet on black markets, it's the most pirated footage of the century. Her ghost, encoded in every frame, haunts the minds of cadets and commanders alike. She didn't just win. She redefined what victory could cost and why it sometimes matters anyway. A ping on the outer relay grid flickers past automated filters. Encrypted, fragmented, old. The content, part coordinates, part broadcast distortion. Analysis teams report that the message references a known Varnak language, then abruptly shifts in a syntax predating the First Concord War. The conclusion, not retreat, displacement. Varnak strongholds aren't falling. They're being emptied. The silence that follows is deeper than jamming. A debris field, drifting without ID tags, confirms the relay's origin. No life signs, only static and wreckage. Metzi steps through ruins with a medic's hands and a warrior's eyes. She leads a multi-species coalition now, rebuilding scarred worlds, dismantling the very research that once nearly broke her. Her name is whispered in peace talks and carved into healing halls. Rika is not at those summits. She has vanished from directorate records. But supply clerks on Mars speak of crates that disappear without tracking codes. Campfires burn deep in the Badlands where no satellites reach. Off-grid comms report unregistered drills and someone correcting form in silence. Ghostwalker lives. She's not done. Only deeper. Near Olympus Mons, children in cadet stripes spar beneath red dusk. They whisper of her between strikes, of the one who walked into a fortress and walked out with a galaxy bleeding behind her. They call her a myth, a warning, a legend. That night, a hooded figure watches from the tree line. One cadet misaligns a stance. The figure steps forward, corrects the angle with a wordless touch. Gasps. Stillness. Then she's gone, as if swallowed by the dust. The children don't chase her. They already know. Ghosts don't stay. They visit. They thought I was the weapon. I was only the warning shot. Her voice rides encrypted bursts through silent stars, tracing old beacons, touching dormant allies. Not a threat, a promise. She's not gone. She's waiting for the next war built on arrogance. And this time, she won't burn alone.